e2 rook checkmate is basically the easiest checkmate in chess. So hopefully you know how to do it. And if not, I will show you how. This is Show. That's my name. And I'll show you how to do this checkmate in case you don't know. Now the rook. Rook is a very simple piece to understand, and that's one reason that this checkmate is so easy. You even have two of them, not just one. So since the rook just moves side to side in full lines or up and down in full lines, we take advantage of how methodical this is. So right now, Black's king is in the middle, and of course, if you're trying to checkmate the king, you have to take away all of the king's squares. And where does the king have the fewest squares to go to naturally? Well, that's going to be the edge. So in all of these checkmates where there's few pieces left on the board, you're really trying to push the king to anywhere on the edge, and that makes things a lot easier if you're the person who's trying to win. So here, actually, the way to do it is, a lot of people call it the rolling rooks, because they just roll. This rook is already stopping the king from coming anywhere down, so we like this rook. In general, in chess, if you have a piece that's in a great spot already, no need to move it. We move the other one, the lazy one, who's not really doing anything right now. We put it here. So now it's check. Okay, no problem. The king goes down. No, the king does not go down. We have this other rook here. Okay, so the king has to go somewhere up. Let's say the king just goes straight up. Okay, well now this rook is doing a great job, right? Stopping the king from going anywhere down. So we use the other rook. This rook rolls up. Again, these two rooks, each covering a full horizontal line, keeping the king shut out from coming back here. The king has to keep going up. And then again, we roll with the rook that's not doing so much right now, right? Because this rook is cutting off the king. Now again, the black king can only go upwards somehow. Again, I hope you're getting the process down by now. And then wherever the king goes next, let's see if you can think ahead. It actually doesn't matter which square the king chooses, because no matter what will you do? And I hope your answer was put this rook. Nope, just trying to fake you out. Yeah, here, of course. Just covering all of the king squares with a simple checkmate. Right, so the only difference in this ending position, I mean, why wasn't it checkmate here? Simply because this row existed. I mean, if chess were played on a, 8x6 board, this would be checkmate already. The thing is, it's not just the pieces you're using to checkmate the king. You're also using the geography of the board, right? It can't be checkmate when the king has all these options, but rather when the rooks are working well and you've pushed the king to an edge. Now, I know this is basically the easiest checkmate, but actually the opponent can make it trickier. And you may have noticed in this, I chose for the black king to simply march in a straight line back. But if the king is a little bit less cooperative and keeps going towards the rooks, then it's a little bit of a different story, because here, I know the king is what you would think it was trying to protect, but the king can capture as well. So we wouldn't want to play a foolish move like this, though we'll see later on how you can actually win with just a rook and a king. But no need to give up your rook like that. Okay. So you can't just ignore the opponent's threats, even though there's just a king. So we simply move this rook. Now, do we want to move it this way? Not really, because the whole reason the rook is here is to cover all of the squares on this horizontal line. So obviously, we want to keep the rook on this line so that we're still stopping the king from going downward. And just so that it will take very long for the king to reach the rook again, to threaten it, move the rook all the way to the edge. One great advantage of the rook being a long-ranged piece, meaning instead of going a fixed distance, like 1 or 2 squares, they can go like across the entire line. Meanwhile, the king is so slow, it's just going 1 square at a time. Now the king goes here. And yes, you may be thinking about this, but the normal move doesn't work. The king would simply take it. So we have to think about this rook too. This isn't going to work for us. You want to, again, have this rook as far away from the king as possible. So that would be here, yes? But actually, this is better. You see, if the rook goes on the same line as the other rook, we're going to run into problems. Because this rook is the one that's currently cutting the king off. So we'd want this rook to next get over here. But the jumping over the piece is not something that's easy for this rook. In fact, it's something that the rook cannot do. So you go as far as possible, but without letting your rooks get tangled, without letting them block each other's way forward. And now you have this optimal setup, just you've shifted everything to the right side of the board, but the rooks work the same whether they're on the right or left side. And speaking of which, if you imagine the board just being turned around, this exact process can work not only with the horizontal lines the rooks cover, but vertically. Here's what I mean. Again, you could reach the same configuration, maneuver your rooks down like this. Oops. But you can even flip it in your mind a bit. Right? Imagine the board being turned 90 degrees. The same exact process works with vertical lines. So here, this rook is stopping the king from coming anywhere to the left. So we bring the other rook here. The king has to continue going somewhere to the right. And eventually we're going to push it all the way to this edge, right? So the king moves. Again, close to the rooks to try to bother us. Check. And then obviously we just continue this right. No, too close, too close. So again, we want this rook to be as far from the king as possible. So let's go down here. The king threatens this rook. Hey, we want this one to be as far from this pesky king as possible. So no, not here, right? Because then the two rooks get tangled up. Here, so that these rooks occupy separate lines so they don't run into each other. And eventually, we will force the king to the right edge of the board. Try this last trick, but that doesn't matter. We just move the rook far away. Next, we want to go here. King moves here to try to stop that, but we can just swing over far away again. And nope, not there. Just making sure you're paying attention. This way, of course. Because we have one rook stopping the king going anywhere to the left. The other rook putting the king in check and covering all the squares. So yes, very simple checkmate. In checkmates that we'll see later on, you will really need to use your own king as a fighter. But the nice thing about this one is that two rooks together, without the help of your king, can both force the opponent's king to an edge and even deliver the final checkmate. Thank you for watching. I hope you have totally mastered this checkmate because it does come up quite a bit. And I hope to see you in the future checkmate videos.